There are moments in life when everything you thought was firm suddenly dissolves in your hands. When the world you trust feels like a thin veil, trembling under the weight of a deeper truth trying to break through. For me, it began the day my body finally collapsed, under years of unspoken tension, hidden guilt, and a quiet belief that I was alone in a universe far larger than I could understand. It didn't look like a spiritual awakening at first. It looked like sickness, the kind that shows up without warning, slipping into your life like a shadow crossing a window pane. One moment, I was functioning. The next, I was struggling to breathe, my heart racing, as if outrunning something I couldn't see. Doctors spoke in terms of symptoms, probabilities, and possible treatments. But deep inside, behind the fear, another voice whispered, "Something else is happening." Something deeper than biology. That was the first time I sensed it. The idea that sickness isn't only a physical event, it's a message. A collapse of the outer form that reveals a fracture in the inner world. I didn't know then that ancient spiritual teachings, including those found in a certain blue-covered text that has reshaped so many lives, taught that sickness begins in the mind, that the body merely echoes what the mind already believes. But I felt it, instinctively, as if I had known it long before I had the words. My world slowed, noise softened, the constant rush dissolved, and in that slowed-down state, I began to notice thoughts I had ignored for years. Fear that had become habitual. Guilt I carried like a stone in my chest. A quiet belief that I had to face everything alone because no one could really understand the depth of my inner world. Those beliefs had been with me so long they felt like facts. But they weren't facts, they were choices, invisible choices, unquestioned choices. And I began to understand my body wasn't betraying me. My body was speaking for me. There's a strange moment when you realize your suffering might be self-chosen, not consciously, not deliberately, but subconsciously, from a place deeper than thought. At first, it feels like an accusation, even cruelty. But then something shifts. You understand that if the mind can choose sickness, it can also choose healing. And suddenly the entire universe rearranges itself because the power you believed external is revealed to be your own. I didn't know how to access that power. Not then. I just knew that my healing wouldn't come only from medicine. Medicine could help stabilize the form, but something else had to transform the cause. Something within, something intelligent, loving, and ancient. So I made a strange decision. I would treat my healing as a spiritual experiment. I would explore the possibility that my mind, my perception, my beliefs, my inner alignment could reshape my physical reality, not through denial, not through blame, but through understanding, through the gentle courage of asking myself the questions I had avoided for years. Why am I really afraid? What am I holding against myself? Where do I believe I'm unworthy of love? And beneath all that, who do I think I am? The answers did not come all at once. They emerged slowly, like dawn rising behind mountains. But they led me somewhere I had never expected. They led me toward a truth both mystical and strangely logical. The body reflects the mind. Not because the body is weak, but because the mind is unimaginably powerful. Some traditions call it consciousness. Some call it spirit. Some call it the Christ self, the healed mind, the invulnerable reality beneath the fragile costume we wear for a little while. Whatever the name, its presence is undeniable when you finally stop running from yourself. As I lay in bed one night, too exhausted to distract myself, something inside me finally broke open. Not in despair, though I had visited that landscape before, but in surrender. A quiet, peaceful surrender. For the first time, I stopped fighting the illness. I stopped resisting the fear. I stopped trying to mentally overpower the symptoms. Instead, I whispered something so simple I had never dared say it before. I'm ready to see this differently. And that sentence changed everything. Not immediately, not dramatically, but deeply. It was like opening a door that had been locked for decades. On the other side was not a cosmic lightning bolt or an angelic voice. It was something much more gentle, a subtle shift in perception, a softening of my inner world, a feeling that I wasn't alone inside my own mind. For the first time, I sensed the presence of a quiet teacher within me, a guide. It didn't feel separate from me, yet it didn't feel limited by me. Some would call this intuition. Some would call it higher consciousness. Some traditions would say it is the part of the mind that remembers God, the part that knows we were never born into separation, the part that cannot be sick. And that quiet teacher said something I will never forget. You are not your body. You are not your fear. You are not the shadow. You are the light that watches it without being touched. In that instant, something shifted. A lifelong identification with my physical form loosened, as if someone had gently lifted a veil. I realized that if the body is the canvas, the mind is the painter, and the painter had been painting from fear for too long. Once I saw that, the healing began, not as a sudden miracle, but as a gradual remembering, a remembering of who I truly was beneath the noise, beneath the guilt, beneath the fearful stories. Healing, I learned, is not fixing the body. Healing is correcting the mind's belief about itself. But the story didn't end with my healing, because once you begin to awaken, something else awakens with you, a calling, a subtle, persistent pull to extend the same clarity you've been given, to become a healer, not in the old sense of fixing others, but in a deeper sense, seeing them truly, seeing them beyond their fear, beyond their sickness, beyond their confusion, seeing them the way truth sees them, whole, innocent, untouched by anything temporary. That is where my journey turned, from personal healing to something larger, something I never expected. And that is where this story truly begins. The shift from being healed to becoming a healer is not dramatic. There are no trumpets, no halos, no sudden proclamations of spiritual authority. It happens quietly, almost secretly, like a seed sprouting beneath the soil before anyone sees the green break through the earth. For me, it began with a single realization. If the mind can heal the body, then the mind can also illuminate other minds, not by force, not by preaching, not by correcting someone's outer behavior, but by remembering the truth in them when they have forgotten it. A healer, I discovered, is not someone who manipulates energy or channels mysterious forces. A healer is someone who refuses to believe in the illusion someone else is trapped in. And that is a revolution. One afternoon, during my recovery, a close friend came to visit. She carried the kind of sadness in her eyes that no medical test could measure. She wasn't physically sick, but she was emotionally wounded in a way that had shaped her entire posture. I recognized the look because I had worn it myself. The look of someone who believes they have failed at life. She told me she felt broken, useless, unlovable. And as she spoke, something in me awakened, something clearer than sympathy, deeper than empathy. It was as if a part of me remembered what was true about her, and I could see the truth shining through every false perception she held. She wasn't broken. She wasn't useless. She wasn't unlovable. She was none of the things she feared. She was light, temporarily convinced she was darkness. And for the first time in my life, I understood what it meant to heal, not to fix, not to provide advice, not to rescue, but to silently hold the truth of someone's being in my awareness so strongly that their self-made illusions began to dissolve. I didn't try to talk her out of her pain. I didn't quote philosophies or spiritual texts. I simply looked at her, listened, and let my mind rest on the truth. She is whole. She is worthy. She is safe. She is held by a presence she may not yet feel, but that is undeniably real. For a moment, the room became quiet, not physically, but energetically. The space between us felt softer, lighter, as though something invisible had entered, something luminous and gentle, something that neither of us had invited consciously, yet both of us deeply needed. She suddenly stopped speaking mid-sentence. Her breath steadied, her eyes softened, and she said, "I don't know why, but I suddenly feel okay, like something lifted." She didn't know what happened, but I did. I had not healed her. I had simply refused to see her as anything less than the truth of what she was. And that act, subtle, silent, and inward, is one of the most powerful forces in the universe. It was then I realized that healing is not something you do. It's something you allow, something that flows through you when you stop believing in what is false. But there is a deeper layer still, because before you can see the truth in others, you must first see it in yourself. And that is where the illusions put up their strongest fight. As my physical health gradually returned, old emotional patterns came to the surface like ghosts rising from deep water. Shame, anger, past grievances, hidden fears. The mind does not release its old identity easily. Healing is not linear. It is not neat. It is not polite. It brings up the very things we've avoided. Because to heal, we must face what we have denied. One night, weeks after my friend's visit, an unexpected wave of fear hit me. It had no clear cause, just an overwhelming feeling that something was wrong. I felt small again, vulnerable, as if everything I had gained could slip away in an instant. This is the point in every spiritual journey where the ego launches its counterattack. It whispers, "You're fragile. You're unsafe. You're alone. You haven't healed anything. You're pretending." And for a moment, I believed it. The fear wrapped around me like cold smoke, convincing me that the progress I'd made was an illusion, that I was still the same frightened person who had collapsed weeks before. But then something extraordinary happened. A thought rose in my mind, calm, steady, unmistakably not born from fear. The truth does not come and go. Only your awareness of it does. It wasn't reassurance, it wasn't comfort, it was correction. And with that correction came clarity. I realized that healing is not a straight line forward. It spirals, it deepens, it revisits old rooms with new light. The fear I felt wasn't a regression. It was a final echo of an identity I was outgrowing. In that moment, I made a choice, a deliberate, conscious choice. I would stop fighting the fear and instead shine awareness on it. Not with resistance, but with curiosity. Not with panic, but with presence. "What are you trying to show me?" I whispered internally. The answer was immediate and simple. "You still think you're alone." That was the wound beneath the sickness. Beneath every sickness, every fear, every emotional injury, the belief in separation. Separation from love, separation from others, separation from the source that created us. Once I saw that, the fear lost its power. Not instantly, but undeniably. It loosened like a knot that had been pulled tight for years. And in that loosening, something opened, a quiet space of awareness untouched by fear, unharmed by the body's fluctuations, immune to the ego's drama. That space felt ancient, familiar, like returning to a home I had forgotten. And then it happened again, that faint inner voice, that teacher within, speaking not in words but in recognition. "Let this be your anchor, not the body, not the fear, this." I didn't realize it then, but I was being introduced to the foundation of all true healing, identification with the self that cannot be sick. This was not denial. This was remembrance. The more I rested in that remembrance, the more I understood the metaphysics I had once found abstract. The body is an effect, not a cause. The mind is the projector. The body is the screen. Fixing the screen without correcting the projector only perpetuates the movie. That realization reshaped everything. Suddenly, my illness made sense. Not as punishment, not as failure, but as communication. A message from the mind attempting to reveal a deeper truth. You have forgotten who you are. And healing became equally simple. Remember. Not with effort, not with struggle, but with willingness. I began practicing a quiet ritual each morning. Nothing mystical, nothing dramatic. I simply sat, closed my eyes, and asked, "What am I beyond this body?" And each time, a deeper stillness emerged. Not always profound, not always dramatic, but real. Some mornings, I felt only silence. Other mornings, a subtle warmth. And occasionally, rare but unforgettable, a powerful feeling of expansion. as if my awareness extended far beyond the boundaries of my physical form. Those moments changed me, because once you experience yourself as something larger than the body, you cannot fully believe you are small again. Healing then became not something I chased, but something I allowed, something natural, something inevitable when the mind aligns with truth. But the true turning point came weeks later, when someone else, an elderly man from my neighborhood, fell ill, and his daughter asked if I could visit him, not as a healer. She didn't know anything about my internal journey. She simply said, "He's lonely. He needs company." But the moment I stepped into his quiet living room, I felt something shift inside me. The way he looked at me, frail and afraid, reminded me of myself during my darkest moment, and instantly I understood this was not a coincidence. This was an invitation, not to fix him, but to see him beyond the trembling body, beyond the prognosis, beyond the fear in his eyes, to recognize the same light in him that I had begun to see in myself. And that was the moment I became a healer, not because I tried to heal, but because I chose to see the truth. He didn't ask me for spiritual insight. He didn't want philosophy. He didn't want techniques. He simply wanted someone to sit with him, someone who didn't flinch at his weakness or treat him like a problem to solve, someone who could be present without pretending to have all the answers. So I sat beside him, and in the silence, I let my mind rest on the truth I had begun to remember in myself. He is not this fragile body. He is not this fear. He is not the shadow that illness casts across a person's life. He is something vast, holy, and untouched behind all appearances. I didn't say any of this out loud. I didn't need to. Healing doesn't require declarations. Healing is recognition. At one point, he looked at me and said, "I feel strangely peaceful right now. It's like the room got lighter." His voice trembled slightly, like someone discovering hope for the first time in weeks. I felt it too. The room had changed. Something had entered, or more accurately, something had been revealed. A presence, a quiet radiance, a sense of being held in something larger than both of us. That moment rewrote everything I thought I knew about healing. It wasn't about curing disease. It wasn't about reversing symptoms. It was about dissolving the illusion of isolation, the illusion that we are separate beings trapped in separate bodies with separate struggles. Because the moment you recognize the shared mind beneath the bodies, healing becomes natural, automatic, inevitable. He fell asleep while I was still there, not a restless sleep, but a calm one, a kind of surrender. When I left, I carried a sense of stillness with me that felt almost sacred. And on the walk back home, I realized something shocking. I hadn't done anything. I hadn't tried to heal him. I hadn't projected energy. I hadn't used any special technique. I had simply been willing to see him as whole. That willingness opened a channel through which a wisdom far beyond my personal mind could reach him. That is when I understood a teaching I had once read but never fully grasped. Your task is not to seek for love, but merely to seek and find all the barriers within yourself that you have built against it. Healing isn't the transmission of power. Healing is the removal of blocks, the blocks in your own mind, because a healer is healed first, always. The weeks that followed felt like a quiet initiation, not ceremonial, not structured, but deeply transformative. Whenever I encountered someone, at the grocery store, in conversation, walking past me on the street, I felt a new sensitivity, as if I could sense the invisible burdens they carried. Not in a psychic way, but in a human way, in a compassionate way. People's postures spoke, their eyes spoke, even their silence spoke. And something in me began responding, not with pity, not with superiority, but with recognition. The recognition that every fear is the same fear. Every guilt is the same guilt. Every loneliness is the same loneliness. And that beneath all of it lies the same light. The more I saw this, the more natural it felt to extend it. Not by effort, but by presence. I noticed something else too. As I held others in truth, my own healing accelerated. The body grew stronger. My energy returned. Old emotional wounds lost their sting. Patterns that once seemed immovable loosened. It was as if the universe was saying, as you give, so you receive. One evening, while reflecting on this, I remembered a passage from a certain profound spiritual teaching. To give and to receive are one in truth. I had heard it before, but now I knew it. Not intellectually, experientially. Each time I saw another as whole, I corrected the illusion in my own mind. Their healing was my healing. But life wasn't done teaching me. There was a deeper layer still. A month later, my physical symptoms unexpectedly flared. Pain returned. Fatigue returned. Fear tried slipping in through old cracks. At first, I felt betrayed by my body, by the universe, even by the progress I thought I had made. I asked myself, did I imagine all this growth? Was I fooling myself? But then I remembered, healing is not the eradication of old patterns. Healing is the recognition that the patterns have no power. This flare wasn't failure. It was proof. Proof that the outer form still followed old pathways, but the inner world had transformed. Because this time, unlike before, I wasn't afraid. I sat quietly and observed the fear trying to rise. It felt familiar, but it no longer felt like home. Something inside me watched it with calm detachment. The body trembled, but the mind remained still. And into that stillness came the same gentle teacher within, the same voice that had guided me through darkness weeks before. Let the illusion rise and watch it dissolve. So I watched. The pain peaked, then softened. The fear grew loud, then faded. And in its place came a deep, expansive peace, stronger than anything I had ever felt before. A peace not dependent on the body's condition, a peace not tied to circumstances, a peace that felt eternal. That night, I understood the true meaning of healing. It is not the restoration of the body, it is the restoration of awareness. Awareness of who you are, awareness of the connection that binds all minds together, awareness of the love that cannot be touched by illness, loss, or death. That awareness is invulnerable. And once you touch it, even for a moment, the illusion of sickness loses its authority. A few days later, something extraordinary happened. A neighbor knocked on my door, holding her crying 5-year-old son. He had fallen and bruised his knee, but it wasn't the injury, it was the shock. He was frightened, overwhelmed. The kind of fear children feel when the world suddenly seems unsafe. She asked if I had any bandages, but as I knelt in front of him, something deeper happened. His fear hit me like a wave, not emotionally, but perceptively. I could feel his inner world, his panic, his confusion. And without thinking, I looked into his eyes and silently said, "You're safe." I didn't say it out loud. I said it in my mind, with the same clarity and conviction I had used with the elderly man weeks earlier. Instantly, his crying softened, his breath steadied. Within seconds, he stopped crying completely and leaned gently into my hand. His mother stared at me. "What did you do?" she asked. "Nothing," I said. "I just saw him." But I knew what had happened. When fear is met with presence, fear dissolves. Not every healing needs to be dramatic. Sometimes the smallest moments reveal the greatest truths, and that moment with the child confirmed something I had been slowly discovering. Healing isn't reserved for saints or mystics. Healing is the natural expression of a mind that remembers love. The problem is not that healing is difficult. The problem is that remembering love seems unnatural when fear has become normal. That is why the world feels broken. Not because it is broken, but because our perception is. And so my journey continued, not as a dramatic transformation, but as a consistent invitation to see differently, Each day brought new chances to practice. Each encounter became a classroom. Each illness, each fear, each relationship revealed another veil to lift. The more I lifted, the lighter everything became. But there was one more lesson waiting for me, the most profound one, the one that would reveal not only the nature of sickness and healing, but the nature of reality itself. It arrived in the form of a dream. The dream began in perfect silence. Not the silence of night, but a deeper, more ancient silence, like the kind that existed before sound was born. I stood in an endless field under a sky that glowed with a soft golden light. There was no sun, yet everything was illuminated. There was no wind, yet the air felt alive. In the distance, I saw a figure walking toward me, slow, steady, familiar. I couldn't see his face clearly, but I felt his presence like a memory I had spent lifetimes trying to recall. He radiated a calm strength that made the entire landscape feel safer. As he came closer, the light around him intensified, not blinding, but warm, like the light of a father who remembers his child even when the child has forgotten him. When he finally reached me, I felt no urge to speak. His presence spoke for both of us. "You called for understanding," he said, though his lips did not move. The words appeared directly in my awareness, as if my mind had opened to receive them. "And so you were brought here." "Where is this place?" I asked. "Your mind," he said, "the part of it you rarely visit, the part that remembers." Something inside me trembled, not with fear but with awe. The dream felt more real than waking life. It felt like a place I had been before, a place where truth was the air itself. I asked him, why was I sick? He looked at me with an expression that felt like compassion infused with absolute clarity. "Because you believe something untrue." What did I believe? That you are separate, separate from love, separate from others, separate from your source, separate from yourself. His words pierced me, not as pain, but as recognition. They didn't explain my sickness. They revealed it. "Separation is the only sickness," he continued. "All symptoms in the body are echoes of that belief. When you forgot who you were, the body reflected the forgetting." I felt tears in the dream, though my physical body slept. Tears not of sadness, but of remembering something heartbreakingly simple. "I don't want to be separate anymore," I said. "You never were," he replied. "You simply believed you were, and belief makes illusion seem real." He reached out his hand and placed it gently on my shoulder. The moment he touched me, the field around us shifted. The sky brightened. The light within me expanded until I felt as though my awareness stretched across everything, across him, across the field, across the entire dream. "This is who you are," he said. "Not the body, not the story, not the fear. This light, this awareness, this presence that cannot be harmed." As he spoke, the light grew brighter, vibrating through me like a memory I had been waiting my entire life to retrieve. It was not a vision, it was recognition. A recognition that felt truer than anything I had ever called myself. And then he said something I will never forget. "When you heal, the world heals with you. Every mind is joined. What you correct in yourself is corrected everywhere. This is why your healing matters more than you know." The words entered me like a key sliding into the lock of my soul. He continued, "You are here to remember your wholeness, and then to see that wholeness in others. This is how you become a healer, not through effort, but through vision, through knowing the truth and refusing to believe anything else." I felt the light within me pulsing, expanding, merging with the light around us until I could no longer tell where I ended and the world began. For the first time in my existence, I felt what it meant to be whole, not healed, whole. A wholeness beyond time, beyond form, beyond anything the body could express. But then something strange happened. The dream darkened, not abruptly, gradually, like a dimming of awareness. The sky faded, the field dissolved. The figure who had guided me began to blur. A shadow crept into the edges of the dream, pulling it back toward the world I recognized. "Don't forget this," he said as the light receded. "You will return to the illusion, but you will carry the memory of truth, and that memory will guide you. It will turn every encounter into a chance to awaken. It will turn every challenge into a doorway." His voice softened as the dream collapsed around me. "And remember this above all, healing is the release of fear, fear of who you truly are." Then the dream dissolved completely. I woke with tears on my pillow and a feeling in my chest that can only be described as a new gravity, a new center of awareness that felt deeper, quieter, and infinitely more real than anything I had known before. But what happened next changed my life in a way I could never have predicted. Over the next several days, my perception of the world subtly shifted. People looked different, not physically, but energetically. It was as if I could see their inner landscape, their hidden wounds, their quiet battles, their forgotten innocence. Not in a supernatural way, but in a profoundly human way, through presence, through openness, through the recognition that beneath every mask, every fear, every defense, lies the same shared light. And with that recognition came something unexpected. People began coming to me, not because I offered help, not because I presented myself as a healer, but because they felt safe around me, because they sensed something in me that they couldn't name but deeply needed. A woman cried when she told me about her failing marriage. A teenager opened up about thoughts he had never shared with anyone. A coworker confessed she felt her life had no meaning. A stranger at a cafe asked if she could sit with me because she felt drawn to my calm. It wasn't me they felt, it was the space I carried, the space created by the quiet teacher within me, the space of truth. But with this new attention came a deeper lesson, one that every healer eventually faces: the temptation to believe you are the source. The ego loves that temptation. It whispers, "Look how wise you are. Look how spiritual you've become. Look how people seek you." And if you believe it, you lose the very clarity that brought people to you. One night, after speaking with 3 different people who had come seeking comfort, I felt exhausted, not physically, but emotionally. I realized I had been trying to help from my own strength. And that is when the inner teacher returned with a correction. "You are not the healer, you are the conduit." Those words struck me with the force of a truth I had been resisting. Healing does not come from the personal mind. Healing does not come from effort. Healing flows through you when you step aside, when you surrender your personal identity and allow the deeper intelligence, the one beyond ego, to take the lead. That night, I whispered inwardly, "I don't know how to heal. Help me see as you see." And the moment I surrendered the role, the exhaustion vanished. In its place came a quiet strength beyond anything I had felt before. That strength became my anchor. And then came the greatest test of all, the moment that would prove whether my healing was temporary or foundational, whether my awakening was a spark or a fire. It happened on a cold morning when the world felt unusually still, as if holding its breath. I was making tea when my phone buzzed with a message from the daughter of the elderly man I had visited weeks earlier. Her voice, even through text, carried a tremor. "Can you come? My father took a turn for the worse. He's asking for you." My chest tightened. A familiar fear flickered inside me. Not fear of death, but fear of failing him. Fear of not being enough. Fear that everything I had learned would crumble when faced with real suffering. But beneath that fear was a quieter, steadier voice. "Go." So I went. When I entered his room, the air felt thick with unspoken emotion. Machines hummed softly. The window curtains were partly drawn, letting in a thin beam of morning light. He lay in his bed, frail, his breaths shallow and uneven. His daughter stood beside him, eyes red from crying. He looked up at me with a mixture of relief and vulnerability. "You came," he whispered. I sat beside him, taking his hand gently. I could feel the fear radiating from his mind, not just fear of dying, but fear of being alone in the final moments of his life, fear of leaving unfinished stories, fear of slipping into the unknown. His daughter stepped out to speak with a nurse, leaving us alone in the stillness. He looked at me with eyes full of questions he could no longer articulate, but I knew what he was asking, not with words, but with soul. Am I safe? Am I loved? Does what comes next hurt? Will I disappear? In that moment, I realized that the greatest sickness of all is the fear of separation at the end of life. So I let every illusion fall away. I closed my eyes, breathed deeply, and allowed my awareness to sink beneath the surface of my thoughts, into that quiet place I had discovered in meditation, the place where I am not the body, not the story, not the identity, but pure presence. And from that space I saw him, not the fragile body, not the trembling hands, not the labored breathing. I saw the truth of him, the same truth the dream figure had shown me about myself, a radiant, infinite being temporarily wearing a body the way a traveler wears a coat for a season. I looked at him with that vision. I didn't try to project comfort. I didn't attempt to stop his fear. I simply held the awareness of his eternal identity in my mind with absolute certainty. And something incredible happened. His breathing eased, his face softened, his eyes closed gently, as if settling into an inner peace he had not felt in years. The tension in his hand melted until he was holding mine with a tender calm. "My fear is gone," he whispered. He wasn't healed physically, but something far greater had healed, something much deeper, the fear of death itself. He opened his eyes once more and asked, "Will you stay?" "I'm here," I said. "I won't leave." And I meant it with every fiber of my being. We sat in silence for a long time, not an empty silence, but a sacred one. A silence full of presence, full of recognition, full of something holy that filled the room like warm light. Then he spoke his final words to me. "Thank you for reminding me." Reminding him of what? Of something he already knew but had forgotten, that he was safe, that he was loved, that he could not be lost, that the end of the body is not the end of him, that nothing real can truly die. Moments later, with his daughter's hand on his arm and my hand still in his, he took his final breath, and the room became brighter, not physically, but the presence in the room expanded, almost like a soft glow filling the air. His daughter felt it too. She gasped as tears streamed down her face, not out of grief, but out of awe. A peace filled the room so complete that it felt like the world itself paused to honor his passing. I knew then, with absolute clarity, that he had not died. He had simply dropped the body and remembered himself. That experience dismantled the last remnants of fear in me. It showed me that healing is not just about easing pain or correcting the body. Healing is awakening, awakening to what cannot be harmed. From that day on, everything changed. People continued to come to me, not because I had answers, but because I had presence. A presence not born of superiority or special abilities, but of deep humility. A presence that refuses to believe the ego stories about anyone. A presence that sees through the mask to the truth behind the eyes. I began to understand something profound. A healer's role is not to fix the dream, but to help the dreamer awaken. I found myself less concerned with symptoms and more attuned to the state of mind behind them. When someone told me they were depressed, I didn't see pathology. I saw a disconnection from their inner light. When someone told me their body was failing, I didn't see frailty. I saw a mind caught in its own illusions. I didn't deny their experiences. I didn't dismiss their pain. I simply didn't make their illusions real. And that single shift made all the difference. Because the moment you stop believing in someone's limitations, you create the space for them to release those limitations themselves. One afternoon, a woman came to see me who had battled chronic illness for years. She had tried everything: doctors, diets, therapies, energy healers, and nothing had worked. She came to me as a last resort, though she didn't know what I could possibly do. When she sat down, I didn't ask for her medical history. I didn't inquire about her symptoms. I asked her one question: when did you stop believing you were worthy of love? She froze. Her entire body trembled. Tears streamed down her face before she could form words. "That's not the problem," she whispered. But we both knew it was. Her healing didn't come that day. It came weeks later, after she allowed herself to face the guilt and grief she had buried for decades. Her body began to improve. Not overnight, but unmistakably. Not because I healed her, but because I reminded her of what she had forgotten, her innocence. And that innocence is the foundation of all true healing. But the greatest shift of all came when I finally understood what my dream guide meant when he said every mind is joined. It happened during a meditation when I felt my awareness expand beyond my body in a way that defied logic. For a moment, I sensed every mind on earth as though they were all connected through invisible threads of light. Not metaphorically, literally. I felt the joy of others within me. I felt the sorrow of others within me. I felt the fear of others within me. I felt the hope of others within me, and I understood there is no other. There is only one field of consciousness wearing billions of faces. Healing, therefore, is not something we send to others. Healing is something we remember in ourselves. And that remembrance radiates through the entire field, touching every mind, because every mind is part of the same whole. After that experience, I no longer questioned my path. I no longer wondered whether healing was possible. I no longer doubted the intelligence guiding me. The doubts that once held me hostage dissolved like mist in sunlight, because I now knew deeply, unquestionably, that the world we see is not the world that is, and that the healed mind heals not just itself but the world around it, simply by being what it truly is. But the final lesson, the culmination of everything I had learned, arrived not through a dream, not through a mystical experience, but through a simple, ordinary encounter, one that revealed the deepest truth of all. It was a quiet afternoon, the kind where time feels slow and the world seems to exhale. I was sitting in a small park, watching sunlight dance through the leaves, when a man I had never seen before sat down on the bench beside me. He looked tired, emotionally, not physically. The kind of tiredness that comes from carrying a heavy secret for far too long. He didn't speak at first, but after a few minutes he looked at me and asked, "Do you believe people can change?" The question was simple, yet the tremor in his voice revealed its weight. I turned toward him, sensing the familiar pull of a soul reaching out. "What makes you ask?" I said gently. He hesitated, staring down at his hands. "I've made mistakes," he said, "a lot of them, things I can't forgive myself for. And I keep thinking, maybe this is just who I am." His confession hung in the air like a fragile thread. I felt the old impulse to offer comfort, reassurance, advice. But I didn't. I remembered the lesson that had shaped my entire journey. The healer does not fix the story. The healer sees beyond it. So I let my awareness drop into the quiet space where truth resides, the space beyond the personal self. And from that stillness, I looked at him, not at his guilt, not at his regrets, but at the truth of who he was beneath them. "You're not your mistakes," I said softly. "You're the awareness that sees them, and awareness is untouched." He looked at me sharply, as if hearing something he had never considered before. I continued, "Guilt is just a belief that you are unworthy of love. But the truth is, your worth is unchanged. Nothing you've done has the power to alter what you are." He swallowed hard. "But I hurt people," he whispered. "And hurting people comes from forgetting who you are," I replied. "Not from evil, but from confusion. When you remember your innocence, your actions naturally change. Not because you try to be better, but because you stop believing the lie that you are broken." A tear slipped down his cheek. He said quietly, "No one's ever said that to me." "I'm not saying it," I told him. "I'm recognizing it." He stared at me for a long moment, and something in his expression softened. like a shell cracking open, not dramatically, but truly. Then he whispered, "Do you think I can forgive myself?" I smiled gently. Forgiveness isn't something you give to yourself. It's something you uncover. Your innocence is already there. Forgiveness is simply letting go of the belief that you lost it. He closed his eyes and breathed deeply, as if something heavy had finally loosened in his chest. In that moment, I saw it again. The same subtle shift I had seen in the elderly man, the crying child, my wounded friend. The same illumination that had awakened in me during my own healing. It was the moment someone stops believing the illusion of their own unworthiness, the moment they remember. And as I watched him, I understood the final lesson. Healing is remembering truth, and every act of true perception awakens that truth in someone else. Healing is contagious, not in the way sickness spreads, but in the way light dissolves darkness. You cannot contain a healed mind. It radiates. As he sat quietly, I felt something profound. I was not the healer. I was simply the mirror. He was not receiving healing from me. He was remembering healing within himself. The light reflected was his own. He opened his eyes again and whispered, "Thank you. I don't know why, but I feel lighter." "You remembered a part of yourself," I said. "That's what healing feels like." He nodded slowly, then stood, offering a grateful smile before walking away. I watched him go, knowing that the shift he felt would ripple outward into his relationships, his choices, his future. Because when a mind releases guilt, the world becomes gentler. After he left, I sat alone on the bench, watching the sunlight flicker through the trees. And in that quiet moment, everything came together. Everything I had learned, everything I had lived, everything I had remembered. Healing is not an event, it is a revelation. A revelation of truth. A revelation of identity. A revelation of oneness. It is the undoing of fear, the dissolution of guilt, the remembering of love. Healing does not require special gifts. It does not require rituals, techniques, or perfect beliefs. Healing requires only one thing: the willingness to see as truth sees, to look past the illusion of bodies and personalities and perceive the light behind the eyes, to look past the stories of sin and failure and recognize the innocence beneath them, to look past sickness and remember that the mind that dreams it is the mind that can awaken from it. Healing is the simplest thing in the universe. It is also the one thing the frightened mind resists. But the moment you pause, breathe, and open even the smallest space of willingness, the light pours in. Not from outside you, but from within you. Because the healer you seek is the self you forgot. And once you remember that, you will see the world differently. You will see sickness as a call for love, not a sign of weakness. You will see fear as a veil, not an enemy. You will see others not as strangers, but as aspects of the same light, wearing different forms. You will see death not as an ending, but as a transition. You will see the body not as you, but as an instrument for communication. You will see love not as a feeling, but as your natural state. And one day, quietly, without fanfare, you will realize something astonishing. You have become a healer, not because you set out to become one, not because you learned a technique, not because you mastered a philosophy, but because you remembered that you are whole, remembered that all minds are joined, remembered that nothing real can be threatened, remembered that love is what you are. When that remembrance becomes your vision, every encounter becomes holy. Every conversation becomes an opportunity. Every relationship becomes a portal. Every moment becomes a choice between illusion and truth. And with each choice, the world shifts, because the world is simply the projection of the mind that looks upon it. As the sun lowered behind the trees and the golden evening light wrapped the park in a gentle glow, I felt the presence of the dream figure again, not as a vision, not as a voice, but as a knowing that whispered, "You have remembered, now help others remember. This is your purpose. This is healing. This is the miracle. And with that, the journey that began with sickness ended in awakening, a journey from fear to love, from confusion to clarity, from misperception to truth. A journey ultimately back to myself and back to you.